Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Cairns and you have joined us for this Premiership roundup. We are going to go back over the 6 games that took place over the weekend. And to do that, I am joined by one of the favourites of the podcast. That is Tony Anderson, one of my favourites, one of my personal favourites anyway. How you doing, Tony?
That's very kind. I'm very well, thank you. I sort of fucked up my day a little bit, I'll be brutally honest, and you've kindly sort of manoeuvred yourself around for me. I just turned up at my work. I work from home, but obviously I'm duty manager sometimes in my office, and I came rolling in at 10:30 because I had booked an appointment with a client in one of the office rooms. So I'd done that, and then I was just after it, right, I need to go to my next one at Fountain Park. I was meeting someone in a library. So I'm like just getting ready, and then someone's like, You're down as a duty manager today. And I'm like, so it means I'm meant to come and open the place. Fortunately, one of the admin staff done it. And I'm like, what? No, I'm not. Turned out I was. And I was like, well, I'll have to go do this. Then I'll come back. Then I'll have to lock up. So it meant I couldn't finish at the time I wanted to. That was all over me. Stop dead in the middle with just a room of people staring at you as you're meant to be in charge. And you've just got absolutely no idea that that's the role you're meant to play. So embarrassing, if I'm being brutally honest. But I was more than, I just ran out, phoned the guy, changed my appointment so they could come to me. And then, but then, because I was a little bit embarrassed, I went to a sandwich shop and sat and had my lunch before going back.
Just hide.
Yeah, hide, pretend it didn't happen. It didn't come back. Phoned my wife to come and drop off my keys and stuff. I mean, we're talking real, I'm 38, the real childlike stuff.
We've all been there, man. We've all been there. Even
Absolutely.
today, I thought I had a flu appointment, so I'd told Joel I'm going to be away at this point. I'm going to be away at that point, and then it turns out I've messed it up. It's tomorrow, so I've just embarrassed. I didn't even have. I was too embarrassed to even go back to him and say that I've got it wrong because there's like so many other things that are like messed up at the moment. So I just thought I'll leave it and I'll just wing it and go tomorrow. I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast.
That's what it's there. You've just told him everything. He's like, Joe, don't worry. People will be talking to Derek McInnes at some point. Do not worry about it. Hopefully he's angry as well. Fine, it's cool.
And on that note, the game that we are going to start on is Hearts' first defeat of the season. It came at Pittodrie. Where else would it have come? And Aberdeen Aberdeen won the match 1-0 through a Topi Heiskanen goal 5 minutes or so before half-time. Tony, what were your general thoughts on this game?
Well, I think a good place to start maybe is with the lineups. You see, because I think there was a lot of players missing on both teams. Obviously, Aberdeen, it seemed quite a late call off for Carlison, which obviously, as you can imagine, I was looking for an Aberdeen win here. So when that came through, I was chatting to you guys online about obviously the difficulties Hearts are having, trying to work out what their lineup was and who was missing. But then the Carlson one dropped. You're like, that seems worse than for anyone. Because Carlson's like, his style of player he is, he's not been that good, but he's still got a talismanic sort of attitude in the style of his play. And you think that with this Aberdeen team, the way it sort of goes through the motions feels really, it always lacks confidence. It's got good players. There's no doubt some of these guys are good. But with it going through the motions, you feel it needs a guy to maybe drag them to create like a good period in the game where they maybe get a couple of shots away, possibly get a goal. So Carlson being out was a bit of a, that stinks for them. But what were your feelings on the Hearts lineup? Because obviously Hearts are missing pretty much the main sort of spine of the team, you could argue.
Yeah, well, if you look at how that 4-4, they've had a lot of success with that 4-4-2, and the parts of it that have stayed fairly constant have been the centre-back pairing, the centre-midfield pairing, and the centre-forward pairing, and all three of those have been broken up ahead of this game. One of them was 2 weeks before Benny didn't make the Dundee United game. But then after that, Craig Halkett's suspended for this, so there's your centre-half pairing broken up, and then Shankland. And I just think when you take all three of those, I take your point about Carlson. I agree that it's probably the single biggest miss out of all 4 players, but I think collectively, when you take the 3 players that are missing from the Hearts team, that's a hard ask to turn up and still put in the same level of performance. I feel that you could take 3 of the best players out of the spine of any team in Scotland, and they would, and it would adversely affect their performance. So I would say that goes a long way to explaining why Hearts maybe didn't perform as well on the day and didn't win the game. But I also think on the day that Hearts weren't too bad. I think there was lots of elements in the game that were sloppy and that weren't good enough, and that there's clearly not like any kind of connection in the attack between Braga and Kabori as there has been between Braga and Shankland.
That was a big thing that I noticed when I watched, especially in the first half. It was like they two had been introduced in the car park before the game, because it was always Shankland. Right, in fact,
well, not quite. But Shankland was supposed to start the game on Friday. As of Friday, Shankland and Ajew were supposed to start the game. And then on Saturday morning, both of them were injured. So you had to change. So that means that Hearts already, and it's the same for every team after the international break. Yeah. I'm not trying to say that Hearts are up against it, but you've already got only a couple of days to prepare. But then Hearts lost a couple of days of preparing with the attack that they eventually went with, if you see what I mean. Now, Aberdeen had the same. They had a player that dropped out early on the day of the game as well. So it's not like, I'm not saying it's like just exclusive to Hearts. I think there's reasons why it wasn't quite as cohesive as it has been for Hearts before.
Because obviously it meant that Braga took up kind of a new different role they was used to, because obviously Hearts were using Kabori as more the centre forward. And as you would, I mean, he's got the pace, so you want to stretch the game a bit. So he's the one who's going to be playing further up there, and Braga's the one who's maybe playing more of the second striker role, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I noticed a lot Braga try to make through balls, Kabori maybe stopping, and then and it looked like Kuster was having a really decent game in there. He was getting there a lot of puck. He nearly fell over at one point, and that really caused a bit. But they managed to get out of it and deal with it. But I saw that was like a breakdown over it. And then the other problem for Hearts is that Kiziridis then went ahead and sort of had his worst game. So it's like the game that he couldn't afford for Kiziridis to also have a drop-off in that point, and he did, because that was where it really did. Hearts still created a few chances. They still looked solid enough, but it was very much where they've created a lot of chances, set pieces this season. Everyone knows their defenders have scored a lot of goal, but that was like, rather than that being like a bolt-on of Hearts' whole game, it became sort of the only way Hearts were really likely to score, it looked like, until the last sort of 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah. And I thought, even though Kiziridis was poor, I still thought he put in a couple of really dangerous deliveries. One in
the first half when he went to the byline.
Yes.
And I think it was Devlin managed to... Yeah. I think the back three Aberdeen, will come to them. I thought they had a really good game. But
I was just going to move on to them because I thought Kuster had a really good game. I thought that after a few hairy moments early in the game, I thought Jack Milne had a very good game. And I felt that Aberdeen went toe-to-toe with Hearts in the first half, and I thought they were the better team for about the first 15, 20 minutes, maybe, something like that. And then I thought Hearts got back into the game. Thought Hearts limited Aberdeen after that, but then Aberdeen did a really good job of defending. Hearts missed a couple of chances that they maybe should have taken. Aberdeen sat in and defended. Like, they did nothing, but there was points where it was like Mourinho-esque, where it was like they would win the ball and then they would just punt it. It wasn't even about retaining possession. It was just about punting it. But to be fair, they did it. They sought out, and Hearts, they probably knew that Hearts have shown a couple of times this season that if you sit in against them, like previous Hearts teams, they're still maybe don't have all the answers, especially with a couple of players missing. And I think Aberdeen played it brilliantly, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been different with Tillene. As it was last season, he obviously done that job against Celtic in the cup final. But it seems that the Athens game really gave him a jolt. I think it maybe got to the stage where he thought, I'm going to get binned. And he's kind of, it looks like since then, kind of went against his instincts, if you like, on how he's always preached that Aberdeen would play and how, in terms of the players that he's bought. It looks like he's decided, I'm going to get some points on the board, make sure we can do that, and then that'll buy me the breathing space to try and go back. And I know some people say that's weak because it's hard to go back once you've pulled out if you're trying to implement these must-dos, and it's the things that the team always does, and the attitude for your style of play and all that. But sometimes, and this is maybe about Jimmy Tilly learning in this country, especially, that maybe he just can't do it all the time. And he's had to now by himself, because Aberdeen have now improved the results, but they're not scoring any goals, really. There's still one goal in a game is mainly what they're producing. They got their 0-0 in Cyprus as well. I know they drew 1-1, I think, with Motherwell. They've got their 1-0 against St Mirren, 1-0 against Hearts. So it's still not, it's not like they're free-flowing, but it's like he realised, I need to stop a rot right now. And the quickest way to do that with this Aberdeen team is to go defensive, because they still have Lazatic, who looks all right when he's back to go. At times, I thought he battled pretty well in the Hearts game, because that's a tough game when they're playing in the style that Aberdeen decided to against Hearts then, especially the second half. Keskinen obviously got his goal. Keskinen is just a really, really frustrating player in general. We don't need to go into him. But Devlin, Milne and Kunster were superb. Devlin, apart from maybe the handball when he went to get the ball and he sort of punched it, he was a bit all over the place there. But outside of that, Devlin just, I can't believe he doesn't play all the time. I know they found another role for Jensen, because Devlin just, in a team in Scotland, I think you just have to use him. He's got so much going for them. What I was going to ask you is, Auchichi and Polvara, what did you feel about them in the middle, Cairns?
I'm surprised. Very surprised. But it worked in the day, and I think that, I mean, they get a lot of help from Keskinen and from Armstrong dropping off the front. And I think that they took advantage. I don't think they were miles better in midfield than Hearts were, but I think at points they managed to take advantage of Devlin and Magnuson not quite settling as a partnership yet. I think I think part of that is exactly what I've just said, them not sort of forming a bond yet, and I think part of it's Magnuson himself still has very little game time in Scotland, and I think he's been thrown in to an extent because of injury as well. So I do think there's, and I wonder whether it was going to be Ajew that was going to start instead of him.
It was starting to get a bit telling that Ajew wasn't getting in even ahead of Magnuson. He thought Magnuson was one of the, out of all the risky signings or the players from left field, he seemed like the furthest afield of the guys that you're bringing in, where you're like, that seems like a punt, which is fair enough.
He even has like a unorthodox sort of body shape and running style. It's like his feet and his ankles sink into the turf. He's got like really sort of bendy ankles. I don't know how to describe it. Watch it, listeners. Watch it and tell me that I'm wrong. I was going to ask.
Sorry, on you go. Please, go on you go.
No, I was going to move on actually, because I was going to say that I was going to ask you where it leaves Aberdeen, but I think you kind of answered it, because at the risk of sounding like a bitter Hearts fan, I still didn't think they were that great. Now I've just said that the losing side wasn't that bad, so I'll totally take it on the chin if people are going to pull me up about it. But I honestly still wasn't overly impressed with Aberdeen. I still think there's a lot of work to do there.
Absolutely, and like I say, I think that he's buying himself time till he sort of figures it out, and that's why sort of your guys like Nisbet not really playing, not a guy you can overly rely on, I think, when the chips are down, possibly. So just not, Milanovic hasn't really settled. Keskinen will work harder defensively, so we'll go for him. Clarkson on the bench. I'm going to go for Armstrong. Armstrong was really, really good in the game yesterday. He was absolutely everywhere. He works his socks off, Armstrong. He's always been a hard-working player. So like you can hang your hat on that. And then I was like, Polvara had a really up and down game. Polvara's a player that's got a lot going for him, but he's quite risky at times. He put a lovely pass to create the goal. I thought it was great. And then Auchichi in the midfield, I thought I was shocked, but I would say it was the best I've seen Auchichi. And that's a low bar. I'm going to be honest, that's a very low bar. Yes. But I thought his touch was good. He was helping them get up the park, and he was working harder. So I can see maybe in the future he might be able to bring back in more of these guys like Milanovic. So I really think Milanovic was meant to be one of their main signings, and it's really not worked out at the moment. But again, I think rather than criticise Tillane for going against these principles in recent weeks, I'm going to say it shows that there's a bit of humility there, and he understood that he needed to get points on the board. He needed to survive for a while, and maybe he can go back to his principles in the future. So fair play to him, because now he can possibly salvage something from the season. And now it's a big win like that at home in front of the team. That's the things that you need that when you're struggling, man. You need,
exactly.
It's not good enough to just win against Motherwell or whatever. You need a big one under your belt, and then everyone, because that's what you do, mate. If you lose 2 games, but you win the derby, for example,
Exactly.
you can advise you go home, you've got the night out. The night out's what you're there for, you know.
Well, sometimes the momentum from just a big result can even if the performance isn't stellar, let's say, you can still take the momentum from the win into the next game. So it could very well mean that it's the start of something for Aberdeen. Yeah,
so he's got something solid going there. So I think he'll do that for a while. I think you might see Armstrong playing in that role with Keskin and behind that. I think that front three might stick for a while, because there's hard working as well as a bit of quality to support everyone. So fair play to them.
Yeah, and lots of new players still bedding in as well for Aberdeen. Let's move on. Let's go back to Saturday, and probably the most eye-catching result of then was Falkirk's 3-0 win at Tannadice. Goals from Calvin Miller, an own goal from goalkeeper Kucherenko, and a third from Brian Graham gave Falkirk all 3 points. It continues Dundee United's very poor home record this season. That's Kilmarnock, Livingston and Falkirk they've lost to and Hearts, if you want to chuck in all the Diddy teams they're losing at home to. But I think the story of this one's definitely Falkirk. They continue to defy expectations, Tony.
Oh, man. I was... It started, as I was saying, I'm really pleased with him, but I'm just like, when it was coming through at Easter Road, and it was like, it was 2-0 in 20 minutes at Tannadice. I'm like, right, this is getting out of hand. It's just getting out of hand. This is too much to believe. And just they won't stop. And now they're getting the rub. It's like, but when they played so well, and we've been through all the things, they went through a bit of suffering. They've added a bit to the team. I've been on record so much talking about McGlynn recently, how much he's getting out of the players that he even brought through League One. We've been through all that, so I just want to leave that there. But now it's like, now they get their rub of the green, but they've already put points on the board, so they're playing well. And now they get to play a team where, sort of like a goalkeeper who's been teetering, who's been begging to do this for quite a long period, Kucherenko, he does it today, and then you're able to pull that up. You're able to gain from that. So that's such an amazing thing for them. But the movement of putting Calvin Miller into that attacking midfield role, he was really lost at the start of the season. We were talking about this a few times when I've been on with Fowler. He looked a bit lost out on the wing at the start of the season. He really wasn't. He looked like he was maybe one of them that it's not going to work. He's the one that might not be able to get up to speed and cope with the step up. But moving him into the centre there in the last few weeks, he looks like he's absolutely loving it in there.
Yes, he's been brilliant, and I've been impressed with the guys either side of him. I'm going to have to look up to
Williams and
Wilson and Williams, because I was a little bit sceptical of some of the sides, especially like after getting a look at a couple of them the first few weeks. I think Williams, one of his first games, I think, was at Tynecastle, and I mean, Falkirk weren't that great that day overall, but I remember thinking that if this is the calibre of players that they've brought in, then I'm still not too convinced about them. But those guys seem to have come onto a game recently. I didn't really think they had a number 9 that was going to be good enough, but they seem to be getting enough out of, between Brian Graham and McKeever, they seem to be getting enough out of those. For this game, you saw it with the first goal, and that's kind of how the match played out. They countered Dundee United so effectively, and arguably more so in the second half. They could have scored at least another couple of goals in the second half, again through countering. And to go into Dundee United for a second, I know that at least the first 2 goals are goalkeeper errors. Like the second one, the second one's like it's not going near a Falkirk player. It's probably just sailing out of play, and he punches it in his own net for about 6 yards.
It's as egregious an error as you're going to make as a goalkeeper. Like
one of the worst I've ever seen.
For the manager,
the same goal, but is it worse than Birighitti getting slid tackled by Stevie May?
I think it is.
I think it is as well.
I can understand more. He's done this early in the season. Kind of punched in his net against Hibs at Tannadice. That was kind of, it wasn't quite as egregious as that one. There was like people battling for the ball, and you could see how this could come about. But this one, you're just like, that's just the wrong way, mate. You've just punched it the wrong way. There's no one near you. That's a disgrace.
What I was going to say, though, is that even though they're down to goalkeeping errors, Dundee United's performance was still so bad to justify them being 2-0 down at halftime. Like, they were still so bad in that first half that regardless, even though it was goalkeeping errors that meant the first 2 goals ultimately went in, Dundee United still played poorly enough to justify being 2 goals behind at halftime.
And I love it when you were mentioning about Falkirk's counter-attacking ability. I think this is where McGlynn's been this is where the smart stuff comes through, is that he isn't able to play. He does it at times, but he isn't able to play. He has mixed it up a little bit in terms of the sort of passing football that they've done in the other leagues. He has been smart enough to temper that and add a bit of variety to their play. They are willing to make big switches. They are willing to go long at times. McKeever's not bad at battling the defenders, and obviously Brian Graham's, I'm assuming I have to say, a wily customer these days. But what you love about with the counter-attacking stuff is they haven't lost their identity, and then they use that way of cutting through teams, like you're saying, at the right time. So then they go back to their identity when in the second half for Brian Graham's goal, it's just bang, bang, bang. They're right through the middle. Then Miller's playing that lovely pass through there. Yes, we can go into Seville just evacuating the dance floor, and I think Esselink just doing the exact same. People just sprinting, like people just let it go on FIFA, and everyone just run around. It's like watching kids play, when everyone sprints towards the ball. So they're just giving up on their positioning. But I love it with Falkirk. It's just when they decide to go back to sort of what they've built their success on over the last 2 years, they can cut through teams. And with Williams and Wilson, like you were saying earlier, they've been really good. Like, Williams is like the most England, like, under 21 winger signing like you've ever seen it. The minute you see him, I know exactly. The minute I see him scamper around, I know exactly where you've come from. Come down 23s, but he really puts the effort in as well, and it helps them. So he supports his fullback really well, and he can still, while he's not perfect, he makes some wrong decisions with his crossing. Obviously, it's inevitable, but it's given them another person who can ball carry a bit. It buys them time to breathe. And Tate and Spencer in there, because I thought Cartwright looked like a stick-on to be a long-term player and one of the better players in that team. I think I said it when I watched them. They've managed to get the duo back together. And Keelan Adams is doing really well. Again, you're still seeing him bounding down the right. Yeah, it's not quite as obvious for the Championship, but he's so quick. He's still getting involved each side. It's just, it's mental what he's managed. It really is. It's starting to get to the stage that this is outrageous to do this with the squad that he had and what everyone told him he couldn't do, and he's managed it. And it's just his ability to improve everyone at each stage. He just must be I said it before, he must be an unbelievable coach to manage to do this.
Yeah. John McGlynn 2.0 as well. Like, he's completely different from his first management spell, going into Celtic as a youth coach and then coming out. It's been absolutely. And just to add to what you've said before we talk about Dundee United briefly before we move on, he's done it with a makeshift defence. They've had a bit of an defensive injury crisis, and they just seem to be sailing along perfectly well. Even so, a kid at centre half, a largely untested kid at centre half, and no left back, and they still seem to be swiping teams aside.
Dundee United looks like a really good find.
He does. Another loanee.
Yeah, it's like the ones that you doubt, the under 20, they're going to if they're going to sort of complement the core squad with them. Oh, I don't know. The ones that he's bringing in, they're all contributing. And Lissa's the same. So they've got their recruitment right. They improve their players all the time. He's managed to add variation to his game, which is what people worried about, that he was going to be too wedded to his principles when he's coming in. Fair play. But Dundee United, an impossible team to sort of judge or talk about. I was just
going to say that, man. They're just so inconsistent. And I think even Dolček, I think Hearts fans must think that Dolček's one of the best players in the league, because he's had 2 very good performances against Hearts, and then he's barely done anything else either side of it. And of course, after a 1-1 draw at Tynecastle, where he plays quite well, he starts again in this game and he's hooked at half time. Dundee United made a double sub at half time and actually improved instantly from kick-off in the second half. They were better. But then I can't remember exactly the time of the goal, but what didn't take too long, 63 minutes. So it was a fair bit into the half. Dundee, sorry.
For Falkirk, to
Falkirk
get to grips.
countered them and then they just kind of lost their way again. Or was it there was a counter attack earlier in the half that kind of spooked them? They lost their way a bit. Anyway, regardless of the order of events, they scored another goal through countering and they threatened to score another few. And Dundee United, yeah, there just seems to be. Is this what you get when you sort of start fresh completely? Because it was like complete clear out. And then not only are you bringing in a bunch of new players, you're bringing in players who don't have experience of the league. So is this sort of what you get with that?
Yeah, maybe because it's still strange that it's like home and away rather than there's maybe something like with Dolchek, Fata. Like Dolchek was really good at Easter Road as well. When the cameras were there in the 3-3 game, I think he set up 2 of the goals, one for Stevenson. So, and then obviously he's had the European games. As there's maybe, I don't want to start, but just the way people talk about Dolchek and his application and training and these things, I don't know if they're true, but the way things, you start to maybe look at Dolchek as a player who maybe picks and chooses when it's time to sort of turn it on. Because he's obviously got a lot of quality. He got Player of the Month at the start.
Yeah.
But there's loads of things to like about the Dundee United. That's why when you see them just have like Ferry and Stevenson, I would probably argue the best the best wing-back combination possibly in the league in terms of all-round. Like, Nicky Cadden's great at crossing, but there's a negative the other side. Chris Cadden, like when you go through like with Hibs ones who maybe do it, just as an example for myself, it just seemed, but I still think that Stevenson and Ferry look much more rounded, that they can do both sides of the game. Stevenson's really good at getting in the box as well and supporting Dolchek. So it doesn't. Savell has been a really good player. I love him in that midfield role. Sapsford really looks handy. He looks like a handful if not fully switched on to the game state all the time. He gets caught offside a lot, as we saw at the game at Tynecastle. So yeah, maybe you're just right. There's a lot to like, but it's going to be ups and downs because it's just a team trying to find its true identity at times. But the problem with Kucherenko now is, I mean, he punched one. I mentioned the one against Dundee United. He done a meek one into the air for Indalundalu to score for St Mirren recently. So that's quite a lot of evidence. And it's had this game. For goalkeepers, it always gets worse, I find. Now that everyone's going to be at him, his confidence is going to get lower. If they're not able to take him out of the firing line, I now think from this game onwards, it was already sort of rearing its ugly head. But now I feel like, as I'm well versed on what happens to goalkeepers when their confidence goes. And if they can't take him out, Barry Gitty was the same. They weren't really able to take him out because the alternatives were awful. And then it just becomes, teams start just playing on them. Then people stop. The game state's different all the time for your team. You're never comfortable, never the same. The other team always fancies themselves. You can never just see a game out. Teams never get their head down because they know, right, we'll get a set piece. We'll try and put something on top of them. The obvious things in the team, if you're Dundee United players, you know the game's never gone. And then you've also got the goalie who's panicking all the time. And that changes everything in terms of how you build form up. Because I said the game's always in the balance once you've got a goalkeeper like that. So not great if you're Dundee United. You've got quite a few games as well before you can do anything about it.
How bad is this, Dave Richards? Right, let's move on. We've got half an hour to do our final 4 matches.
Maybe the 35. I need to go on 40, that's for sure.
Right, no worries.
Okay.
Kilmarnock 1, Motherwell 3 is our next game. Motherwell are up to 6 in the Scottish Premiership after their win at Rugby Park. Tawande Maswanise scored twice. Stamatolopoulos added a penalty later on. That was after Scott Tiffany had pulled one back for Kilmarnock. Tony, Motherwell seem to be, I suppose, League Cup semi-final aside, they seem to be hitting a little bit of form and a little bit of a groove, putting some results, putting some substance to this style.
Yeah, and the fact that I know they make subtle changes from time to time, but they seem pretty set on 9.
It's a 4-3-3. It's always going to be a 4-3-3.
And the people that are in it, on the whole, yes, there might be subtle changes, and with strikers, maybe with Stam or Hendry or whatever. And you've got Said, and obviously you're going to adjust maybe the subtle changes that you make depending on fitness or whatever. But on the whole, you could name 9 or 10 of Motherwell's team. So you always feel like even if they hit the struggles that their style might bring on, that when things don't particularly go right for you, and he sticks with these principles. But if you've got 9 or 10 guys that are basically they're probably using about 14, 15 guys all the time. And I think shows that's why they've been able to get the point across quickly enough. And even though they had a downturn, they've been able to sort of battle their way through it and then start to put form together. And probably why, on the whole, Motherwell are still pretty hard to beat. They don't lose a lot of football matches, even though they overly draw. And this, for as far as my reading goes and watching the highlights, I think this was maybe a lot more routine a win than maybe Kettlewell or other commentators might want to sort of paint this. The timings of things change, game state, all those types of phrases can, like, this is something I'm going to talk about when I come on to Hibs and Dundee. So I don't think Kettlewell's being completely genuine in his sort of discussions about the game.
Well, it seems to be in contrast to what I've witnessed Kilmarnock fans saying about the game. It's and see, if it was just a one-off, then maybe you could get away with saying that. I think when you're on a run of conceding 17 goals in 6 matches, losing all 6 of those games, it doesn't wash as much, I don't think. And I know it's difficult. You can't just come out and say the same thing after every game. You can't constantly throw your players under the bus, for instance. You've got to kind of pick and choose what you say and how you say it. But at the same time, you've got to play both sides. You've got to not alienate your dressing room while at the same time trying to keep the fans on board. And it feels like, I'm not saying he's deliberately trying to pull the wool over the fans' eyes, but just for want of a better expression, just say that's how some of the fans are feeling, hearing that afterwards. It's not going to do you any favours when you're on this kind of run, is it?
No, it's not, and that's obviously the thing that makes it. Motherwell fans sort of turned on him for quite similar stuff towards the end of his period at Motherwell, where they saw kind of really similar sort of attitude from him, when it's like, you're telling us things that we can see. You're telling us to deny what we can see with our own eyes, and they're the polar opposite. And I know, again, a lot of this is about injuries, but Kilmarnock, it's like, it's just names chucked on a sheet. Like this time it was Tiffany, Kilty and Anderson, and I know they've lost, well, one of their main strikers is out for a lot of the season, and sort of Dackers has lost his place recently, but it's just always seems random. I'm not convinced at all by the 2 wing backs and Thompson and Brown. In a 3-5-2, you need so much more. A 3-4-3, sorry, you need so much more from them, and they seem far too safe. Thompson can maybe pop in a cross. That's about. I'm not like convinced by him at all. And they can't get the main back 3. Stranger was out there. That keeps chopping and changing. So like they can't even rely on, sort of like we're saying with Aberdeen and even Hearts. When we were talking earlier, that even when the chips are down, Motherwell aren't able to do that now. It just, like as you said, the amount of goals it all just caves in. And I think a Motherwell team who know their identity and turn up, really, if you look back at this, you're thinking, this is a stick-on to happen the way it did. Maybe just because you look at a fixture, come on at Motherwell, oh, that's a tough one. But really, when you scratch under the surface, how it's been going, injuries, how one team's set up, that this was maybe inevitably what we're having. I thought Kelly were barely in the game for long periods. And Motherwell, like, I spoke to Graham and had a few reading. They didn't even think this is one of their best performances of the season at all. And Longello was just tearing it up. Longello and Said down the left-hand side, just totally dominating, and they couldn't cope with them at all. Saeed and Just, by the way, is two players they brought in. Just lovely to watch.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's no perfect, but they're just like really easy on the eye players to watch.
I think Maswanisi fits into that as well. I'm constantly surprised at how good he is, because he doesn't look like he's physically good work in Scotland, or maybe not just in Scotland. I mean, on lots of levels of the game, he's small, and he also looks really slight as well. But he just scores goals. The boy just scores goals. You cannot argue with it. And
the variation in his goals is massive. Like, he goes all types. So it just, there's no like. So that makes it really hard to pick him up, because it's like they play him wide, but he's really playing centre forward.
Yeah,
he
doesn't
get involved in the
forward.
game.
Yeah,
aye, because
in the corner
the
he
game
scores
just passes him
brilliant.
by. Aye. He does anything, he'll drift in and out. He doesn't really go looking for the ball at all. So he focuses on, as you would if you've got a variation of goals and you're a good finisher, just focuses on playing on the periphery and then try to pick up these positions. So when you've got the team like Slattery in there who works really hard and that role, and then even with Saeed and Just and Watt and Fadinga, it's like they've created an environment where they can get away with Maswanisi being sort of playing like a luxury player, but he's not really a luxury player, because you can't really call a guy who puts ball in the net all the time a luxury player.
No, and I think like Motherwell system's built to be like everybody does their bit. I don't think it's built to carry a luxury player or anything like that. There might be skillful players within there, but I don't think it's built to sort of carry a luxury player, as I say.
But I don't see much more to see with Kilmarnock. It just, I'd really want. They have so little.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I feel that they have been probably mentioned that they've been quite unlucky with injury. You mentioned
definitely.
the strikers, goalkeeper, that's been huge for them, because we said at the beginning of the season it looked like they had sorted out the goalkeeper issue, and they're chopping and changing from week to week at the moment to try and get something that sort of worked, and you can't really blame them for that. It's just one of those things.
Well, I mean, I blame them because they decided to send McCrory on loan. That was their decision. They decided to run with two goalkeepers, is what they done. They decided to run with them.
Right,
and they have someone that couldn't play. And obviously Stryjek was a really big miss, because he was really, really good. He looked great, and we already know that he's solid in this. But yeah, they took a risk, and it's came back to bite them. And again, like I said with Dundee United, it spreads fear when you can't rely. And then that means that, again, there's never a period you feel comfortable, never a period you can see out a game, never a period that when you're on top that you think that's going to be enough. And then that stops you. That stops you being able to put together any real sort of form. You're just living game to game, surviving in 15-minute spells. You know what I mean? Because you can't rely on anything. And I think that spreads. And when the fans realise that, then they know they're not going to be able to progress at all. Then everything becomes a slog. And then that's when apathy comes in. I do think that with goalkeepers, it's massive. If you don't have one, it can wreck. I think it can wreck entire seasons, not having a good enough goalkeeper. It just renders everything else pointless.
It's a common denominator. We've spoken about it before. The Hearts goalkeepers, when they went down, like Pereira and Doyle, and then the Killie goalkeepers the season after, the Dundee United, Birighitti, all that. It is a common theme for teams that go down. Let's move on to your beloved Cabbage and Ribs.
Oh, why
they won 2-0 at home against Stephen Presley's Dundee. Goals from Kieran Bowie, who missed an absolute sitter, then scored the more difficult one, and a second goal in the second half from Jamie McGrath, who you were saying the other day, Tony, is turning out to be quite the signing.
Yeah. I've always rated McGrath, and I was really happy when we did sign him, but it caused a bit of stir. There felt like there was a lot of, obviously, arguments between Aberdeen and Hibs fans about how much you pay and all that nonsense.
I've never seen a fan base, I'm not just talking about this player, but I've never seen a fan base regularly disown players as much as I've seen Aberdeen fans do it. It's just like anytime somebody leaves, that's it. They'll go digging out all the negative stuff they can find on him.
Because it was like giving, like the idea that giving a 28-year-old a 4-year deal was fucking insane. Well, I was like, even Jay McGrath, who isn't really a pacey player either, I didn't see the problem with it. What I would argue, obviously, he's had injury problems with his career, so I can maybe understand that. But if what they was reported, his wages, I'm not going to go because I don't know it, but when people were putting that it'll be £1 million odd over the 4 years, I mean, that works out as like 4 or 5 grand. And if you're getting a guy like McGrath who knows the league, who's like a high quality player, if not always fully consistent, he has been a bit of a fair weather fan. But the other thing is that McGrath's never played in a team that's really good and really sort of safe. Like the Hibs team is building him for last season. There was a lot of continuity with the manager, with the players. He was coming into an environment where you could think he could excel. And he wouldn't he wouldn't be the guy that would have to drag them around. He'd be able to play in that hole. He'd be able to play in the way that he wanted to play, rather than like when he was at St Mirren. It's obviously like sort of bottom 16 where he's like one of the main guys. Aberdeen, where there's a lot of competition for places and they're all over the place. Like Aberdeen's form is crazy. And he sort of epitomised that in his time at Aberdeen, because his consistency levels, he'd go 12 games where he looked like a world beater, and then it would be, you wouldn't see him, and then he'd pull a hamstring or something. You wouldn't see him for months.
So where is he playing for Hibs, Tony? Because, and sort of relatedly, did he maybe, I know he's changed his system now, but did he maybe not fit into Jimmy Tillene's system last season because it was, he usually played from the left or something, didn't he? And Tillene definitely wants much more pace from his wide attackers. Yeah,
because he started off really well last season, McGrath. He was great for the first 8 or 9 games. Then his form did dip off, because you can't lie, it didn't dip off, and then he got, it wasn't like he was great, then he got injured. It was great, then it dipped off for 4 or 5 weeks, and then he was essentially out for till like April. And he was playing out there, and there's been periods in this season where Hibs have been playing a 3-4-3 when I don't think they've looked as good either, and McGrath's been playing off the left, where he still got involved, he still scored goals, but this one that they've got now, I think Hibs have chopped and changed a bit, but now the Mulligan, Barlaser and McGrath looks like is what he's going with. And McGrath is playing in behind a front two, he plays in that central role where he can float around. Him and Boyle are just sort of allowed to just move around the pitch. So it really works for players of their caliber, because they're both really, Boyle, and Boyle's become a really intelligent player. It's like he picks up loads of good positions. His first touch is really good. It's not pace is like one is low down on his levels of attributes now, really what he uses. And McGrath loves it. You see how he picks it up there, and he's always got options. He's got the 2 Caddens who split, so he's always got a good option wide. And with Barlaser, he can switch the ball really well. So it's really, they found a real balance there. And McGrath, it means he can just float, pick up good positions to put in crosses, pick up good positions to play penetrative passes. And of course, like we're seeing in recent weeks, he's scoring a lot of goals. And goals has always been something he can do. So the Hibs have really found a balance in recent weeks. You can tell simply through the results. It's not like we can all see that Hibs results have improved. They're starting to win games. They're starting to keep clean sheets. And it's the same as what I was talking about earlier. They've found what looks like near enough their best teams. Yes, they might change a wing back. That might happen. Maybe a centre half might have to come in at different times. Boyle, Cleege, that might change. But the real basis of it is all there now, and you can start to see it and then we'll come to the other guy. Salinger is what a find he is. I keep talking about what a good goalkeeper brings to the team. Like recently, just Salinger's transformed it now, and now Hibs are keeping loads of clean sheets. That Mulligan, Barlaser, McGrath, it's weird because I think out of all of them, Chaiwa I think's got the highest ceiling. Every player that Hibs have in that midfield, I really rate him. I think he's great, but I think they found what they want. I think Mulligan's possibly a bit better at driving into the box and being more attacking than maybe what Chaiwa is at the moment. So I think that'll work in his favour. Although they share tons of the same attributes and are very similar, I think Mulligan's going to keep his place in there. And then man of the match was Barlaser. If you set off him, you can't. The only way you can play him now is you'll have to put someone on him, because if you're leaving him, as you saw in the highlights, Nicky Cadden was getting loads of room. I said this previously on a podcast where I think it was a St Mirren game. We saw Barlaser playing well, so Nicky Cadden's playing well. The thing that was lacking for Hibs is Nicky Cadden was starting to have to dribble a lot more, when really you have to do is you have to get it from one side to the other. So you get out to Nicky Cadden, and most of the time he's rolling at his feet and he's measuring across rather than bumming down the line and trying to dig a cross out with a fullback. You know, that's, and last season with Hibs, because they had Levitt and Trianis, they'd done it constantly. And every time it got, so it was like Nicky Cadden in open play was taking free kicks because he would have the time and the space before anyone could get out to him because the ball being switched fast enough. And I can see now with Gray why he was so desperate to get Ballasar towards the end of the window, because I can see that's obviously what his thinking was. He needed to have someone to get out his feet and the accuracy to be perfect. Because when you do those big switches, and like I'm saying, you want to unleash Nicky Cadden's crossing, it has to be spot on. He can't be waiting. If you lose a yard, the defender's getting over. He's going to have to dribble. You're then making him do things. I'm not saying he can. I'm not saying he can't buy a yard or he can't accelerate. But on the whole, if you want to see the best of him, you're going to have to get that ball out to him pretty quickly. And with Barlasser and also McGrath in there, they're both able to do it. You see, Hanley was getting up. People were getting into it because Dundee, as you can imagine, we'll come on to them in a second, sitting off. So players people just start booming passes because they've got the time. You've got the time to just measure it. These players don't play for Scotland, or Ballasar's played like 180 games in the Championship. You sit off them, they can just do it. They can do it every time. And that's what they started, the game started to come into. McGrath, Ballasar, Hanley, they're just switching the ball constantly into the wing backs. Hibs put in about 40 crosses overall. Iredale was getting forward, and it was just so easy. But Bowie got the goals. He missed 2 sitters. In fact, he done a fresh air because we got the balls quickly out to Cadden. He crossed it in. Boyle cushioned it down, and Bowie just completely missed the ball. And I was like, he's in a bad way, this guy. He is. You know, he just looked like bereft of confidence. Then the header comes, a good ball from Mulligan, and you're like, right, this guy's never scored again. We've hit that world. But he eventually gets that goal. He does really well. The touch out, smashing it across, kind of how you picture Bowie to score quite a lot of goals. And then he cushions it off for McGrath to get that goal. And Salinger made a couple of massive saves at the back, which will take me on quite nicely to Dundee. I thought Salinger made 2 massive saves. The second one especially is like one of the saves of the season. I mean, it's a yard out.
Craig Gordon-esque save, dare I say.
Yeah, it very much is. You're probably spot on. But it's like a yard away, he just sticks a hand up, and it's powerful enough to get away. But to come on to Dundee about that is, that front three's good. It's just Congreve, Murray, and Eugene. There's more than enough to like. I've not seen
much of the third guy you mentioned, Eugene. I've not seen much of him.
I saw him a little bit in our game, and I was like, right, okay, there's something there. He's quite, again, like I was saying about Williams in the game, I was like, right, the guy's got pace, he's got trickery. I can see that this man can play wing. You know, I don't know if he's good enough to know how consistent he is, but then watching him up close there, I was pretty impressed with them. But it's just, they just don't unleash them anywhere near enough. They don't give them the basis to go at it. And in the last 10 minutes, when sort of Dundee were freed, they gave him plenty bother. I mean, Salinger had to make 2 massive saves. They've got Danda in there that gives them a set-piece threat. So, I mean, Danda's not perfect, but when you're a team scrap at the bottom of the league, you need players with weapons, Craig. You know what I mean? Like, you don't, you're not going to get the makeup of the right team. So you need to have, I'll need a quick winger, I'll need someone who can put in the set pieces, I'll need a pest of a striker or a massive guy up for, you know, you start
and
looking
Simon
for...
Murray is a fucking weapon.
Yeah, like you just start, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you go through it and it's there. They do have enough to make it work, but they're just forceful with the handbrake on. I don't want to give Prezi too much stick because in other games they've been miles worse in terms of how little they want to take part in the game. Like, it's still shit. Don't get me wrong. It was better than what I'd seen in other games, like, compared to the first game of the season where Hibs went to Dens, which was like embarrassing. They wouldn't, even when Hibs gifted them a goal, they didn't bother ever trying to sort of press Hibs again. And I know we've seen it in other games where it's just like, it's like they're not even taking part. They're just, it's like a training exercise.
I'm still learning on the job. And like,
okay, that
may be true. It probably is true. It's probably true for most managers. But see the situation that you're, just stop saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just stop saying stuff like that. You're already struggling to keep the fans on board, and he just keeps giving them more and more ammunition in his interviews. But I think the problem is, and maybe it's a good thing for him ultimately, but don't think he really gives a fuck. I think he's just going to continue to do what he thinks is the best thing. And I mean that in like in a nice way. I mean, I think he just, that's his way. He's confident in what he's doing and that what he does, and that's just kind of outside noise kind of thing. But at the same time, as we were talking about earlier with Kettlewell, you've got to try and play both sides. You've got to try and keep those people with you. And Dundee fans have had it a bit tough for quite a while now, and things looked like they were getting a bit better under Tony Docherty, and one perceptively poor season, and they just feel like they've reverted back to Dundee.
Yeah,
and not everything was perfect under Tony Docherty, but
far from it.
but the logic seemed to be that they only stayed up on the final day of the season. Half the league only stayed up on the final day of the season. It was one of those, like, teams that finished qualified top 6 were effectively surviving relegation in the same breath. That's how tight the league was. So I feel it was quite harsh to get rid of Tony Docherty after that. Even though I'm willing to listen to the arguments from Dundee fans why it was time for a change, and possibly Stephen Presley just wasn't the right man. Maybe that's the right way of looking at it. I don't know.
Because they were, like, as I said, they obviously sit in and they were playing much more. They were more willing to be on the ball. That's something I did notice for them in the first half as well. They were trying to put passes together, but then Hibs are just miles better than them, so they just sort of move them out the way, or they make a poor pass, you take it. Hibs are one of the better sides in the league, so don't get me wrong, but it's like, now when you're trying to implement these things, and you've got this background, you've already got this perception of you, it becomes difficult, because most teams would have struggled coming to Easter Road. You know that this is a harder game. You go to Tynecastle, Easter Road, these are the better teams in the league, so it's going to be hard. So I could see, if I'm being brutally honest, I can see a difference. I could see there was an idea of what they were going to try and do, but in the first half, they couldn't really get near Hibs. So it still finishes in the half. They barely had a touch in the box. They barely had a shot on goal. You would get away with that if you hadn't already spent so many games not even contemplating moving forward and try to do it. So, but I could see it, and they struggled with it. So that's another week down when you've barely done it. And then when he claims, we played well, like what he said against Rangers, but really it was because you had a free kick on goal in the first 10 minutes that meant you got a shot on target. You're still 2-0 down. And in this, you came into it because Hibs made subs, and it made them a bit weaker. Levitt came in, and Hibs lost a bit of control with Barlaster in there, and Levitt coming back for injury. A lot of criticism of just what happened. And obviously Dundee had to start going for it. Then they created a few chances, but they are in the last 10 minutes of the game when you're 2-0 down. It's not the same as putting together a good performance. It's not claiming there's an improvement. It shows that if given the right state and the right sort of circumstances, you've got a team that can create some chances, but you can't claim that you've done well, because when you're 2-0 down in the last 10 minutes, you ask the goalie a couple of questions. That's the fucking bare minimum. If you're losing 2-0, especially against a Hibs team who've been well known at points in the season and over a couple of years, that if you can get one, there's a great chance you can get two. I mean, the Hibs 2, whoever 2, is one of the most popular results in the entire league. So you know that there's a price you can get there. So I'd be pulling my hair out, because we're right, and Danda, Eugene, Murray, there's enough that you can definitely go and try and win a football match against the vast majority of this league. And you've chosen not to for so long that even when you maybe put a little bit together here, where I could see there was maybe a slight change in the attitude in the first half, there's too much water under the bridge. It's too little, too late, just as only really going for it in the last 10 minutes. It's also too little, too late. But Murray was pulling his hair out as well. He looks, just watching him, he looks like an angry guy anyway. And we've hit a day. He looks furious playing in that team, and he starts making wrong decisions as well, because he's playing in a stressful manner. Because he wasn't
absolutely
good.
Furious when he came off at Tynecastle. He was going nuts at somebody when he came off, and he had to be told to calm down. He just kept going and going.
So he needs a result now. He needs a result now, Presley. Otherwise, I think they're just going to be forced to make a change, because Livingston just looked more cohesive than them. So,
that result takes Hibs up to third and into the title race, just 5 points behind Celtic now, and level on points with Rangers, who managed to win on Saturday as well. They defeated Livingston 2-1 at Ibrox, goals from Fernandes and Diamonde, either side of Tete Yenge's goal for Livingston. But the real sort of talking point in this, I don't know, I mean, we tend to move away from this kind of stuff, but I suppose it's inescapable. was the VAR decision not to, or I don't know, the lack of a VAR decision to not step in and award a penalty for, was it Magoma? Magoma's handball.
No, it's not Fernandez. I thought it was Fernandez. He scored the header and
maybe
he
it was.
nearly gave away the penalty. Yeah.
Right, okay, fair enough. A very crucial point in the game as well.
Yeah, that would have put, that was but Yengi's sort of second chance. He'd already scored the equaliser by that point. And yeah, we do try and shy away a bit, but this season especially, it's mental. I hate it. It's something I normally don't really like doing, but I feel this season especially has made it impossible not to regularly talk about. There's so many, I use the words egregious for Kukurenko for his mistakes, but it's the same for, they're like jaw-droppingly bad decisions every week. Or like in the case of the St Mirren Hibs game, where you can see that they've made a mistake with how that they're doing it. So it's like, and this is just, that's not on. You've got to, they're trained. This is like top flight football. So much money's being put into it. And if the cases they aren't being trained properly, then that comes back to the SPFL or the SFA. But this is just, it's like what's the problem? The referee has to come over there and at least get a chance to make a decision. If they're saying it's too close and they're not sure if he deliberately does it, I think when it's that, but that's very subjective. If I'm the ref, I want to look. I want to look at that because when you look at it, it looks like he's batting the ball away. The ball's going on target. We see how soft some of the other penalties that are given when the ball's going on target.
That's it.
When the ball's going on target, like the one that Hibs got against Dundee United at Tannadice, like there's loads of them. Falkirk, but it's like when the ball's going on target, it looks like the rules are really strict in terms of handball. And this one
his arm
like,
comes to the ball as well.
Yes,
it's not as if
it's
he makes a motion towards the ball. Not that he's doing it deliberately, but like his arm does swing because he's running. His arm does swing and stop the ball. Yeah. So there seems to be a suggestion that's maybe come off his leg, but I don't see that.
That was nonsense. I think that was just someone just made something up there. I don't think anyone actually claimed that. But
what about the actual game, Tony? Tell me, is Danny Rule onto something here? Is this resultant performance a continuation of the worries that Rangers have had this season because they've got out of jail against a team that they should be swiping aside at Ibrox? Or is it Rule playing very, very smart and working with what he's got, being more pragmatic and just doing what really matters, in contrast to his predecessor, doing what really matters, first and foremost, getting the results?
I feel like you're desperately trying to push me up for a bit of both in here.
I realised that about 3/4 of the way through that, and that's what I was thinking.
I think, I mean, to be factual, from everything I know in this game, Rangers were as bad as they've been at any game this season. Role obviously deserves the benefit of the doubt. I mean, this isn't his squad. It's
don't want to start that cycle again.
Yeah, it's a very, very badly put together squad. I think everyone's pretty much accepting of that. And one thing that you said about Role is that he's willing to. He's being pragmatic with what he has. Like, he went away for the three at the back in this game. The three at the back, which has been serving him pretty well. He used the Easter Road. And he obviously used that against Celtic in the cup. But he went with he obviously knew he can't really do that in this game against Livingston at home. So he went to the 4-2-3-1. And it didn't really work. But I think there's an argument that the three at the back wouldn't work in this game as well because of the team that they're trying to go with. But it's really worrying with Ant-Man, Asgard, and Gassama because that's a lot of money. There was a lot of expectation on them. I was sort of like assured that all these guys would be good. Like, you know what I mean? And when you watch them in individual moments, you're like, you can see the talent that's there, but like none of them are stepping up whatsoever. He's going to have to keep doing this role, is doing something that normally a Rangers manager does. Normally a Rangers manager like Russell Martin was wanting to do. It's just set up, and that's how you play, because we're fucking better than everyone else, and we'll run over the top of them. But Role's being forced into, he's having to sit down and think massively about how we're going to put together the victories to beat Livingston at Ibrox and shifting things around to do it. And he's just going to have to keep doing that. And the good thing for Roll is that with the sacking today of Stewart and Thilwell, I'd be quite excited I was him, because that would make me think that he's going to get quite a lot of say over recruitment going into January, because, well, they've removed the other people that are involved in doing it.
And the result comes against quite well, in a defensive sense anyway, depleted Livingston side. It's really hamstrung them this season, hasn't it? I mean, I think they seem to have performed very well in this game, regardless of that. But I don't think you can stress enough how much McGowan dropping out of that has really
huge,
really hampered them. And they're at the point now where they're playing a back three with one defender. So, I mean, I suppose that Martindale does deserve a bit of credit for the performance here. And I suppose for keeping Livingston aren't getting embarrassed every week. I wouldn't say that Livingston are a lost cause. I know they've slipped down the table and they haven't been picking up results recently, but I think that Martindale still deserves a lot of credit that they're not bordering on a lost cause. They don't look like they don't have any ideas. I do firmly believe that they're a couple of defenders away from being a much better team.
Yeah, I think when McGowan comes back in, I think they'll be much more solid, and then they'll be able to turn the really, really tight games maybe in their favour. And you only need to do that, in all honesty, 3 times out of 9 to stay up. You know, you get a couple of draws, you win 3 games out of 9, you probably that'd be enough to sort of tide you over. If you're taking like 12 points, 15 points, you know, you're going to get up to like 40 points doing that, you know. So, like, I think when they do that, it will turn for them. And this is why I worry about Dundee so much, because I think Martindale's a better manager by miles. he comes up with so many more solutions. They're able to play it in much more variable ways. They're able to, and they're able to go to tougher places like Ibrox, or when Hibs or teams come to Almondvale. You know, they're able to, or the Macaroni, whatever it gets called these days. When teams come in, they're able to sort of fashion out a fight. Whereas a lot of time with Dundee, apart from that Celtic game, it's just like you're just waiting for them to get beat. Like that, you're just like waiting for the inevitable to happen, and it's not that way with Livingston. They are just worse than our team. They've just got worse players, our team, but you've got a manager who can think it through. And with this, it looked great. He went with Yengi, and he's used the 4 strikers have rotated through all different parts of the season. When it started off, it looked like Muirhead would be the main guy, but it looks like they really want to have the work rate May up there, especially like when you're saying, you can see that with when McGowan was coming out and they started leaking goals hand over fist. It's not just changing the back 3. Goes like Muirhead likes a shot. He's a proper forward. He wants the ball and he wants to win. That's not a criticism. That he's a forward player. That's how he plays, Muirhead. It's all about playing forward, hitting shots, trying to create moments and create goals. Whereas May's basically changed himself into a defensive striker. That's really, I would argue.
You're right. He's certainly very good at. Oh, he's off the ball work's brilliant. As in, like when the team are out of possession.
Aye, and I feel like, and I don't mean this to be unfair. I just feel like that's become like maybe May's main attribute. Is that part which is
what he was best at towards his time at the end of Aberdeen. Well, that and being just that, I think he's very tactically disciplined. I think he's good at linking and things like that. But he definitely, I mean, you're right. I mean, maybe overdoing it a wee bit, but he definitely lost a lot of the razzmatazz that he had when he was a young striker before his knees exploded, basically.
So he worked. So you can see that's cute. That's smart. He took him out. He's Bakila and Yengi moves around, who are both very awkward customers and might get you 5 or 6 goals. It'd be Yengi in this one. I thought it was really smart. He was really fresh. He's more mobile than Bakila because Bakila's really old, and he's obviously saw that Fernandez and Jiga are playing and thinking they might not enjoy a mobile, extremely awkward player who's not particularly good, but very awkward and mobile. And so it proved, even though, to be fair to him, I'm saying not very good, his touch for the goal is superb, but it's criminal for Rangers. It's the two of the goals each other. They do it on the sports scene. You just let people wander up with the ball, and then when they're 40 yards out, just they're able to just float a ball. Like I'm saying, if you're sitting off these players, they're good. You just allow them to float balls in behind you. It's going to cause you bother. And then obviously for that goal, Yengi gets it. It's a lovely pass and he great touch and he scores. And then later on, when Miovski came on for Asgard, who looks like possibly the worst of the three that I mentioned earlier, Miovski came on and maybe had one of his best 45 minutes. Again, like I said earlier, a low bar. But Miovski was great, and he managed to, the ball over the top, he does well for Tavernier, and he sets up the goal, and Diamandi comes in and scores. But yeah, you'd be sick if you're Livingston. But Rangers were so bad that you think they're lucky, because if there was any other day that they were playing 90% of their teams in this league, if they play like that, they're probably going home with nothing. And they've managed to get away with it and go home with 3. But yeah, I mean, you'd be sick if you're Livingston, because those, even in this season when the Old Firm are bad, those opportunities for teams of Livingston's ability don't come up they probably won't come up again, to be honest, at Ibrox or Parkhead.
King of the trademarked Old Firm, which Celtic are very much a part of. Let's move on to their match, where they won 1-0 away to St Mirren, courtesy of a 95th minute Callum McGregor goal. It was a very captain's grab the game by the scruff of the neck goal. It was a very Celtic win, and you just feel kicked off the show with talking about Hearts' first defeat of the season. I wouldn't say that this is like, I wouldn't go as far as to say like turning point or anything, because I never really thought that Hearts were going to win the league or anything like that. But it felt like quite a significant result after Hearts went on. The manner of it, and then Hearts going on to lose afterwards, it felt like quite a significant result for Celtic, because you feel like, regardless that nobody within the club gets on with each other, nobody can see eye to eye. You can't find 2 people at Celtic that see eye to eye. They'll still limp over the line and win the league. That's just the way it is.
And it looks like Nancy's done. That looks like that's happening right now, and they expect him in after the Hibs game on Sunday, so that'll be O'Neill's last game is what's expected. And he's got some job on his hands, because they look like they've never trained. Like when you watch Celtic, it's I find it really, really hard to watch. It doesn't make any sense to you. There's no patterns of play. It's just guys on a pitch, and they're better than you. They've got loads of players, but they can't build up whatsoever. It's all so cumbersome. They don't move through the lines. St Mirren were just on top of them quickly, winning the ball back. I was quite like the way that I liked having McMenamin in that sort of attacking midfield role. I know that it's St Mirren, the Phillips, Bacchus and O'Hara is what they go for. So most of the time they also have Donnelly who can come into there. So, but I think they've maybe struck something there when playing McMenamin in that role, because he got in behind something that they maybe lack a bit of penetration coming. Phillips does it at times, but I still don't think that's his number one sort of like mindset. Whereas McMenamin is a forward player. Put it this way, I prefer him there than when they try and shoehorn him in at the wing back role. I think that's really he really struggles in there. And with him and John on Ralston and Tierney looked every bit like they were in the pub till 7 a.m. on Wednesday. They were both really, really struggling. And Ralston, and I felt for him, because Maeda and Engels, Maeda was sort of hugging the touchline for large periods. And then when he was making but then John was pressuring. And this is the problem with Celtic. When you lose your aura, it's like he's pitching the touchline. But John, rather than worrying about Maeda, he's going up and actually pressurising Ralston. So Ralston can't find any moves. He's trying to move the ball at the angles. And then Maeda's making, I saw it so many times, making the runs in from the byline and trying to go in, like come in between the centre half. So the run from outside to in. And they could never find him. I never even noticed. See it so many times. Maeda just like, what's the point? But he was doing it so often. And it was just Ralston. They were just on top of him.
They're so good at setting up against teams that are better than them. They're so good at it. I mean, and I know that they've not had... They've been on a bit of a difficult... Again, semi-final aside, they've been on a bit of a difficult run league-wise. They've maybe not got all the results that their play would deserve, but that's twice against Hearts, against Rangers, and against Celtic. And then if you want to throw in the semi-final as well, with it being a big occasion against a team that, okay, they might not be as good as Celtic, but they like to keep the ball and build the play the way that Celtic try to. And they seem to have these teams number. And I mean, they were unlucky not to win this game. This wasn't just the fact that they were on the verge of getting a point and then they've lost. They could have very well had the game won before injury time.
Definitely. They were definitely the better team before that. And like I said, Tanecki maybe looked a bit dangerous, but again, was back to it's just an individual.
End product. Boyd doesn't have an end product.
Sometimes you'll scare a few people and then it'll go away. Sometimes Natati will make a really good pass because they've got good quality. But there's no sort of cohesive unit of creating play. Johnny Kenny is mobile, but when he moves wide, nobody comes in. Like I thought he would move wide to help them. Then Hatate, Engels, and McGregor, they all want to sit and play in that same position as well. So no one replaces the sort of mobile striker or Maeda. So it was terrible. Yeah. It was really, really like it's eye-opening watching how bad they are.
Don't get me wrong, Tanecki looks like a very, very good player, and he's still very new in the door and all that kind of stuff. But he hasn't put the numbers on the board yet. And I think the biggest issue with it is that was arguably the strongest part of their team. Maeda is arguably the best player in the country. I know I kind of tailed off a lot this season. There's maybe reasons for that. But they've moved him. They're shoehorning him on the right to bring in this other guy on the left, and then they've got another two left wingers on the bench that kind of get in the team as well. It's again like we're talking about the Rangers squad, just not very good squad building. This to a much lesser extent as an example of that as well, I think.
Yeah, and I don't want to give Kenny too much stick because obviously he's one of the weaker guys in there. He's done a job for them when they needed them, but they look miles better when Maeda went in the centre forward. They have so much more to look forward to. McKeown, even though I didn't think was great when he came on, it didn't matter who put in there, just having Maeda in that central role. And then with Freckleton, who pretty much pocketed Maeda in when he was out in the wide bit, he went off. That's he got injured and he was struggling a bit at points. So I don't know if he's going to be all right because he's like just a brilliant player, one of the best defenders in the league at the moment with him. But they got out of jail eventually, and St Mirren, they had the Liam Scales thing. I find that one really tough because he has to make the clearance because the guy's there. But when you really look up close, I don't think he knows he's there. So I think he would. I think if he wouldn't be standing there, I still think he would have done that.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure. I thought that if I saw I was the same as you, saw the replay behind the goal and thought, wait a minute, has he actually just turned round and volleyed it right away? But then I don't know. The more I looked at it, I thought maybe he's noticed him as he's turning and then he's just stuck his leg out. Because otherwise, why would you do that? Who's he trying to take it away from otherwise?
It definitely has to be offside. I know that I'd be annoyed as well, but the guy's offside and he has to make a clearance.
And St Mirren have had some stinking decisions against them, especially the Freckleton one in the Hearts game. Again, so they should have won that game off the back of that, you'd argue. But I think there's a bit of allowing that to cloud their judgment for this one.
Which we all do because you all want to feel more hard done by.
I don't think you can argue that this one.
You add them all up and you go, look at what we've got. I've made a dossier, and that's what it is. But Craig, I'm going to need to go.
No, I know. I was just going to wrap it up after that. I think we're both guilty there. Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you to everybody.
Pleasure. It was lovely doing that with you.
Yes, I know. And we will catch up soon, although the listeners don't need to hear that. But thank you to everybody for joining us. Thanks to everybody for your joining up for the Patreon and all your support there is really appreciated. We'll be back with plenty more going up on that Patreon and another show on Thursday. And until then, we will see you all soon.